Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to set sail and live the life of your dreams, then do we have the All Dreams on Deck show for you. Today I'll be talking with Jeremy Cage, global citizen, president of the Cage Group, and the author of an inspiring read for business and life, All Dreams on Deck. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today, about charting the course for your life and work. That plus we'll talk about the power of pourqois, blue Alfa Romeo spiders, Dr. Strawn, gotcha, French and science, swimming with sharks and your 12-year-old, who in the world is Captain Willy, the United Snacks of America, and what in the world's the Accidental Jibe.
Okay. Well, nice to be here. Really excited to be here.
So glad to have you here. Welcome to the show, Jeremy. Are you ready to shine?
I sure am. Let's go.
Woohoo! So before we dive right into things, have you always had a dream of traveling around the world?
Yeah, yes, the answer to that is yes. And I think it started from when I was a young kid, because as a young kid we moved all around Europe as a family. We started in England and then to Germany, then to France, then to Belgium, then to the US. And I just got that bug. I loved new cultures, like living in new places, learning about new people. So yeah, as I launched my career, I had exactly the same aspiration.
And it's interesting because you had those same aspirations, and it sounded like because of that, dating in your 20s wasn't going so well.
Well, I'm not sure that it was because of that. I think that was just because of me. I don't think that was. No. Like I had, as you read in the book, I had a dream that I wanted to find a life partner, my wife, and have a family. But I had this thing in my head that every time I would get close, I'd start dating, I'd get really close to someone, and then I'd get scared, and then I'd run away. And so a big part of what I had to do was change my behavior, because it's kind of binary. If I had that dream and I kept on with my behavior, it was never going to happen. So I either needed to, stop running away or change the dream. And I obviously decided to stop running away, and next year we'll be celebrating 25 years.
Awesome. And so I want to dive into how you met Pat, but it's interesting. The reframing had to be, I imagine, something from girl will take me from my dreams to I can actually find one who helps me reach my dreams.
That's right, and that's what I talk about in the book. I mean, Pat was fantastic in that she actually unprompted. One evening, I remember her very much saying, she goes, just so you know, she goes, I don't want to make your dreams smaller. I want to make them bigger. And I'm like, okay, that helps.
The one, I get it.
You got it.
So she was challenging you to make all of your dreams bigger, not to live life small.
That's right. You have this, or at least I had this. I won't put this on anyone else. I had this perception that marriage was all about compromise, which was just code word for you have to give up all your dreams. And of course, she's proven that that's not the case.
So how did you guys meet?
At work. Yeah, I was Procter & Gamble. I was working at Procter & Gamble at the time, and they bought a company out in Baltimore called Noxell that makes CoverGirl and Noxzema. And I was transferred out with that acquisition at the same time as my wife happened to be moving from New York. She had accepted a position to be brand manager of CoverGirl, and so we met there.
Fantastic. And then after you were married, what happened to her? How'd her life change?
Oh, well, completely. Actually, the week we got married, she quit her job in the U.S. She sold her house. She sold her car. We got married and went to our honeymoon in Costa Rica, and then we flew directly to Stockholm, Sweden, which is where I was living at the time. So she literally changed everything in her life. And we woke up after the honeymoon, and we're sitting in there and laying in bed in Stockholm thinking, okay, now what next? Here we go.
Excellent. And I imagine that's when you talk about in the book, and I want to ask about it, you did the lifeboat exercise.
Well, that's right. And I think this is a really important concept that I talk about in the book, is I think that there's no such thing as work-life balance. I think that that's a gross oversimplification of who we are as human beings, because it presupposes that there are these two things, there's work and there's life. And so I think a much more holistic and actually accurate depiction of us is what I call the lifeboat. So in a lifeboat, if you throw everything into a lifeboat, it's going to sink. So you got to prioritize what are the important components of that lifeboat, that are going to not only help you survive but thrive. And so that's the concept of life balance, of which work is a part. So work is one of those components. or what I call grab bags, because that's what they're called in nautical terms. And I have, I guess, about 7 or 8 in my life. There's obviously work is one of my grab bags. There's family, there's friends, there's faith, there's my spirit, there's fitness. So I've got there's philanthropy. So I've got a couple of really, or like, as I say, 7 or 8 really big grab bags in my lifeboat. And I think that's a much better, and I think you should have dreams for all of them. That's why I say all dreams on deck. You should have dreams for each of these grab bags. And Pat and I did that exercise early on in our relationship, and it's proven to be terrific.
Awesome. How deep did you go with your dreams? How much specificity did you put to them?
Well, again, you're teeing up the question, but I think that most people and most businesses die full of potential because we dream vaguely, and because the dream is vague, we dread specifically. So all of the things, and that paralyzes us from ever achieving. From ever being able to achieve that dream. So I have this vague dream of one day I want to sail around the world, but then all of the dreads of, what about the kids' education? What about finances? What about the boat? What about storms at sea? What about taking a break mid-career? What about this, that, and the other? Paralyze you from ever getting to that dream. So what we did as a couple is say, okay, so what are the most important dreams that we each have? And at that point, that was an exercise in quantity, not quality. We did it in separate rooms, by the way. And then, still apart, I sort of prioritized which were the most important for me, and she did the same. And then we got together and we had that conversation. And one of my most important dreams was to sail around the world, and one of hers was to travel around the world. So we said, you know what, that's a really great, life dream for us to do together. And there are things on my list that she's not interested in, but now she knows about them and can support me. And similarly for her, things that she has dreams that I don't necessarily need to be intimately involved with, but I can help support her achieve those dreams now. So yeah, we did that exercise early on.
Awesome. And I want to dive into your dreams, and we're going to dive into your adventure. But before that, it sounds like your father was maybe a real inspiration the whole way along. He was a pioneer. And what did he do at 53?
Yeah. Well, at 53, he was a very successful executive. He's a terrific, as you say, role model and inspiration. He started life as a farmer in England, and he joined a company called Eli Lilly Pharmaceuticals, which had an agricultural division in sales because he didn't have enough money to buy his own farm. And from there, he went up through the ranks, and he was like number 2 at the company, and had an opportunity to be CEO, but decided instead to retire early at 53 and go and build homes for the homeless. Because as he looked at, he didn't use these terms, but as he looked at his overall life balance, he didn't need any more money. He didn't need any more headaches. He didn't need any more tension or pressure. And he felt like it was time for him to do something different. And as I say, he dedicated himself at that point to really swinging the hammer for Habitat for Humanity, and did that for a while, and then went on to do other things.
Beautiful. And when you say swinging the hammer, you mean that quite literally?
I mean, yeah, he was not in any kind of administrative role. He was up on the roof, or he was helping build the houses, which was great.
Awesome. And woohoo!
Yeah.
So how many kids did you have, and how did their age affect the timing for this trip around the world that you guys decided you wanted to take?
So Bradley, I have 2 kids. I have a son who at the time was 12, and my daughter who at the time when we set sail was 10. And our criteria were, and this is where you get to the specificity of the dream, is we said, okay, we want to go when our kids are old enough that it can shape them, that they can help, that they'll be able to remember it, but also young enough where it's okay to be with mom and dad. And also that we didn't want to mess up high school and, girlfriends and boyfriends. And so we said, okay, well, if that's the case, that's a very short window for any of your viewers and listeners who have kids. That's a pretty short window. So we said, okay, we need to go when Bradley's 12 and we need to go when Elena's 10. That means that we need to set sail in 2007. And in order for us to set sail in 2007, you start to then, with that specificity, you say, okay, well, then what do we need to do in order to make that happen? And we obviously needed a boat. We needed to build the skills, all of the appropriate skills. So we needed to prepare ourselves both from a career standpoint and financially to enable that to happen. And there again, you get to the specificity of the dream. and then you just deal with the obstacles or the dreads or the fears one by one, and they don't paralyze you from actually moving towards your dream.
There's a really powerful one. In 2005, I believe you were starting a new job in Mexico, and you had to go to your boss and say, "Oh, in a couple years, by the way."
That's right. No, well, actually, I said that in 2005 because that was like 2 years before we already knew that we wanted to go in 2007. I'd been working at the company for a while, and we just planned it out. And there's obviously a high level of risk. I mean, a lot of people would say, well, that's really risky going in front of your boss and making that kind of declaration. And I think that what we often don't do enough of is weigh the risk of not having those conversations or not taking those decisions or not pursuing those dreams. And the cost, and it's been proven, is very high because the vast majority of people, either late in life or on their deathbeds, all believe that they're dying and they've left something on the table. They haven't achieved their full potential, as defined by them, not by anyone else.
So how did that talk go?
Went great. No. He was. I sat down with him, and first of all, there was a high level of trust between the two of us, which always helps. And I said, like, here's what I want to do, and here's why I think this is actually not only beneficial for me, but I think it'll actually be beneficial to the company. And I took him through it, and his immediate reaction, he said one of the reasons why he loved coming to work every day was because he never knew what he was gonna what new challenges he would face. And he said, "This is a new challenge, and we'll make it happen." And he was true to his word, and we worked on a plan that we then sat down with the president of international for the company, and then ultimately the CEO of PepsiCo, and the CEO of PepsiCo said, "Absolutely, off you go."
Awesome. So then how did you choose? We were just talking briefly about boats beforehand, and I was a real novice sailor as a kid, really novice. But a 20-foot cat is the biggest that I've taken out as far as a cat goes. I've taken out a 26 or 28-footer is the biggest I've done.
Yeah.
How did you choose your 43-footer? How did you choose to choose a catamaran, and how did she become the Hakuna Matata?
Okay. So my wife actually has a bad spine, and so we decided that the idea of living at heeled over, which means at an angle for a year and a half, wasn't going to be good for her spine. And one of the differences between a catamaran, a cruising catamaran, and a what's called a mono, which has two hulls, and a monohull, which has one, is that a catamaran sails flat, so it doesn't heel very much. So I was going to be significantly more comfortable for my wife. So that was the first thing. The second was catamarans have a huge amount of space. So we had one hull that was dedicated to us. So we had one side of the boat where we had like a bedroom, a little office, and a shower. And then our kids had the other side of the boat, and they each had their own bedroom and their own little bathroom. And in between was the galley, the kitchen, and the like the dining area and the living area. So they also. So it's got a lot more space, so that was going to help the family dynamic. They sail faster. It was more comfortable for my wife because it sails flat, and they're incredibly seaworthy. So with all of that, that's how we decided on this particular one, and came to the name Hakuna Matata because I'm sure we wanted a name that when you're sailing around when you're sailing. You're known by your boat's name. That's like your last name. So right now my last name is Cage, but while we were traveling, we were the Hakunas. So we wanted a name that was youthful, but also that Hakuna Matata means no worries in Swahili, and we like to think that this was our year and a half of no worries. Which of course wasn't the case. Boat ownership and sailing around the world is the antithesis of no worries. But it was still our attitude, and it was great.
I love it. It's interesting. I'm looking here while we're talking about, and this way jumps ahead, but I'm looking at boat length, and I'm thinking of seas of about that same height that you went through off of Australia.
That's right. Yeah, we got caught in a heavy tropical storm or near hurricane for 3 days straight, and we had really high winds and really big waves, and one of the things that I talk about in the book is you have to accept reality quickly when there's a storm approaching you, and that can be an emotional storm, it can be a relationship storm, it can be a work storm. In our case, it was physically a storm, and so we we battened down the hatches, we prepared the crew, we did everything as carefully as we could, and we made it through just fine.
Awesome. So let's talk about that and preparation for situations. How did you teach the kids how to run the boat? And was your daughter 8 when she was learning how to do this?
That's right. I think not just having a specific dream isn't good enough, right? I mean, you can have a specific dream. Then you need to get highly intentional, and I talk about this in the book, as you know. Need to get highly intentional about that dream. But then a big component of it is planning and preparation, regardless of the dream. If it's a fitness dream, if it's a work dream, if it's a relationship dream, you need to plan and prepare for the dream to come true. And in our case, we took the kids to navigation and boat handling training when Elena was 8 and Bradley was 10, so that if Pat and I were swept overboard, they wouldn't be just marooned out in the ocean. They would be able to effectively sail the boat and navigate it back to the next destination. But I took marine diesel mechanics so that I could fix the generators or the engines in mid-ocean. My wife took...
I want to pause you, because that came in handy. That was so impressive that they wouldn't let you graduate until you could take it apart and put it back together again.
That's right. You have to take the engine apart, and it had to run by the end of the week again. So that turned out to be really useful. My wife took marine medical training, and so she was no surgeon, but she was just dangerous enough with a skin stapler to scare the kids. And she also took abandoned ship training. So how do you if you're in a situation where you need to abandon ship, how do you do that in a way that maintains the health and wellness of the occupants of the life raft? And so all of that kind of stuff. So anyone that's going after like a dream that's important to them, my counsel really is you've got to get as specific as possible about the dream. Mm-hmm. You need to get highly intentional about that dream, and I talk about how to do that in the book. But then a big step that we tend to like to skip over because we're kind of an instant, gratification society is the planning and the preparation. This took us years, so it's not something that just happened overnight. In order for us to do this effectively and successfully, it took us years. And the same is true for most big dreams, if you will, that people have in their lives.
That makes sense. So before we dive into some of the specifics of planning our dreams and what's that look like, Jessica, my wife, she had a really good question beforehand, and she said, is pirates ever a real concern?
They were not for us. We did, unfortunately. We had some good friends that got caught up in the Somali pirate issue, and off the coast of Africa, and unfortunately they were both murdered. But we stopped our trip. We didn't go all the way around. We went as far east as Egypt, mm-hmm. and then from Egypt we came back through the Mediterranean, and then we started going west from Egypt all the way around to Australia. So in mileage terms, we did about 85% of the world. Okay. But yes, there are issues with pirates, and unfortunately the number of circumnavigations has reduced significantly because of the pirate danger in the Indian Ocean, and it is a real one.
That makes sense too. But then now if we jump into more of your book, something you were talking about earlier, which is obviously we want to avoid the pirate danger, but there's a big risk in your life if you do nothing, if you don't go for it.
Well, that's right, and it doesn't just apply to big dreams, and so I don't want people to, when they read the book, to misinterpret that this is just about sailing around the world-sized dreams. This has to do with the dreams of launching a new product, or changing jobs, or like going out and finding a life partner, or just starting dating again if you've lost someone, or dealing. So the point is it's not just about really big dreams.
What did Dr. Strawn in French teach you?
So Dr. Strawn was an amazing professor. He was my French professor at a small liberal arts college in the Midwest called Wabash College, which is where I went. And the benefit of a small college is that all of the professors talk to each other. And I went in as a freshman, having no idea really what I wanted to do. So I thought, okay, well, pre-med, it sounds good. And but I was lousy at biology, chemistry, physics, all of the things that you need. And so he, and this was just wonderful. I mean, he actually took the time to sit me down and say, "What are you doing? We've all talked about you. You're incredibly bright, and you're here on a full ride scholarship, and you're doing great, but you're studying all the wrong stuff, and you're like, so what are you doing with your, and so he challenged me, and he said, just major in what you enjoy doing, and the rest will take care of itself. And again, there you have to have some faith that that's actually going to happen. But I did that, and so then I switched, and I majored in French and minored in sculpture and painting, and still managed to get a job at Procter and Gamble as soon as I graduated from college. So it did actually work out just fine.
And I have a cousin who's a fantastic sports med doc, and he went by studying. He didn't study French, but he studied art history before going to med school, because for him that was doing what he loved. That's
right, exactly. So you got to have confidence that if you're doing what you love, that more often than not, if you do it with intentionality and you plan and prepare for things to work out well, and you have the courage to actually to pursue that path, then it'll work out.
Excellent. Can you tell us what is VMG?
So VMG is a sailing term. It's called velocity made good. And for anyone who knows how to sail, you can't sail directly into the wind because the wind will push you out. So you typically have to zigzag towards your destination. So it may seem like you're going really, really fast, but you're actually not going anywhere near as fast as you think towards your actual destination. So your VMG is not very as fast as you think it is. But then you have your VMG, or your velocity made good, is also affected by the currents that you cannot see underneath the ocean. And sometimes they can be underneath the surface of the water. Sometimes they can be hindering you towards your destination, meaning you don't see it. It feels like you're moving along, but you're actually being pushed away from your destination by the current. And other times, it's actually pushing you along much faster than you think you're going. And what I talk about in the book is you should understand what your velocity made good is towards your dreams, and what are the forces, both seen and unseen, that are either helping you or hindering you in the pursuit of that dream.
So, for instance, if your dream is to get to, starting your own company or getting high up in a particular company, but you've gone an extremely accelerated path, but in an industry that's taking you farther away, then your VMG isn't very good.
That's right. If you're working at a place that doesn't sync up with what your aspiration is or what your dream is, then you're right. Your velocity made good towards what is truly going to be fulfilling for you is not as good as it could be.
On that note, what can you tell us about your friend Kevin from Procter & Gamble when you were out running in 1987?
Just a dear friend, a mentor for life, really. Kevin is a great guy, and we would run, and I had the benefit when I was just starting my career of having someone like Kevin in my life who we were running. We would run at lunchtime, and at one point he said, what were my dreams? And I gave him some really vague answer about, I want to be successful, I want to do this. And so at some point we had it slowed to a walk, and he said, but are you just going to leave it to chance, or are you going to try and actually, articulate what those dreams are and make and actually make them happen? And a lot of what he pushed me to think about is what I'm hoping the book pushes folks who read it to think about, and not just think about, but act on.
Where at the time, did your head snap back of, ooh, I do get to get serious about my dreams?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it wasn't just I do get to, but it was almost like I have a responsibility to, because I'm a pretty self-confident guy, and I felt like I knew what I was going for. But it turned out that after Kevin challenged me, and I spent a little bit more time really thinking about it, it turned out that I was really not being anywhere near as serious about my dreams as they deserved. And that I'm going to dovetail for a second, because I actually think that dreams are the most powerful force on the planet. And we didn't talk about that at the beginning, but if you think about it, this country, every business, every brand, every service, every relationship, and actually every life, because you started as a dream of your parents to have a family. So dreams surround us, and they are the most powerful force on the planet, and we just don't spend anywhere near enough time taking them as seriously as we should, because at the end of the day, as I say, that they're all around us. They've created everything around us.
So if we go back, then we talk about the power dreams. Let's talk about the Stephen Covey exercise, because I think this is kind of where we get lost. The rock, sand, and water exercise.
Yeah, well, that's very linked to the lifeboat exercise. If you were to take a glass of just a glass, and you have a thing of sand and you have a thing of stones, then if you fill the glass up with the sand, which is the quote unquote small stuff, the emails, the messages, all of the daily distractions, if you fill it up with the small stuff, then there's no room for the rocks or the most important things or the grab bags, however you want to talk about them, to go in the glass. They just won't fit. However, if you put the rocks in first and then you pour the sand in, the little stuff, then it molds itself around the big stuff, and it all fits in. So the point that I try and illustrate in the book, actually, that Stephen Covey did an excellent job with, is prioritize. Make sure you got the big rocks in the glass first, and then you can pour all the sand around it, all the little stuff. But you can't do it the other way around. If you fill up the glass with all the little stuff, there just physically is no room for the rocks to fit in. And you can see the sketches in the book as to how that really works. But it's a fun exercise actually to do with kids and family at home.
What would you say because this is such a common, well, I guess it's been since who knows how far back, but it's certainly today, you need to get serious, put your dreams aside and get serious about life.
Well, but that's my point. It's like nothing around us exists if it wasn't for dreams. Now, I'm not saying just like sort of sit in la la land. That's the whole point. Think of your dreams as aspirations that you have the potential to fulfill. And so that's when I actually think you're getting serious, is when you clearly and specifically articulate your dream, and then you get intentional about it and you think about it. I love an example. So let's talk about Michael Phelps. Sure. He had a dream to become the most decorated athlete of all time, Olympian of all time. Okay, so he didn't just have that dream. He actually was highly intentional about it and declared it in such a way that the whole world was talking about it, literally the whole world. And had he gone to China and not delivered and only got 8 gold medals instead of 9, then it's like he would have failed. But so he was highly specific about the dream, highly intentional about it, and then he put in all of the planning and the preparation to enable him to achieve that dream of greatness, and then he had the courage to go for it. And I think courage is a muscle that you build, just like any muscle, if you don't use it, it atrophies. But as you're doing all of this work, as you're getting intentional, as you're doing all of the planning and preparation, you're building your courage muscle, and then you've summoned the courage to actually make it happen. That, for me, is getting serious about your life. That it doesn't matter what the dream is. It's getting serious about life. And I love that example because he obviously achieved it.
And I would think back then he may not have had all of his, forgetting the name now, life bags in order.
Yeah, grab bags.
Bags, excuse me, in order. But later on, he started to get more balance.
Well, that's right. I mean, he was so single-mindedly focused on that, and he said this in multiple interviews that he was really neglecting the other components of his lifeboat, and which is why he's really insisted on retiring. He ended up with an alcohol and drug problem that he's dealt with, and he's now he's married with a kid and working as an assistant coach, I guess in Arizona, I think. But I mean, he's sort of looking at. It appears as though, I don't know him personally, it appears as though he is looking at life much more holistically from as a lifeboat concept. But yeah. So,
Let's talk more about intentionality. We're talking a lot about you need to get intentional. Maybe what are the levels of intentionality and how do we dive into it?
Yeah, I talk about this wonderful concept I think it's a wonderful concept called the ladder of intentionality. Typically, the higher you climb on a ladder, the riskier it gets, as it is with intentionality. I think the lowest rung is just to think about something. Is to you have the thought and it rattles around in your head for a little while, and then oftentimes it goes, I want to be a rock star. Okay, great. So I have a dream of being a rock star, and then for the vast majority of us, that dream then just goes away. But for a few, that stays, that stays in their brain, and they want to, and they actually get excited about that. So then you would climb up, and there's no intentionality, by the way, at that level. It's an important level because that's where dreams start. but it's not. There's no intentionality there. So next level up on the ladder of intentionality would be to actually write it down. We love to-do lists, and we love to cross things off because it feels like we're accomplishing something and we're holding ourselves accountable. Your intentionality has gone up a little bit there, but then it takes a big leap up when you get to like a big, climb up another rung to declaring something out loud. And if you declare it out loud, then now it's your word, and so it's a lot heavier, and you feel a lot more intentional, and that feels a lot riskier. But again, remember my idea that I think the risk of not doing this is significantly greater, and we don't often weigh that enough. I think you're at the highest rung on the ladder of intentionality when not only have you declared it out loud, but you've declared it in such a way that you get everybody talking about it, because then something magical happens. One is you feel responsible not only to yourself for your dream, but to all of these other people who are now so excited about your dream that they want it, they want you to succeed at it too. And then the second magical thing that happens is you've suddenly created a community of people that want to help lift you up and help you get to where you're trying to go.
I love it. And this actually blasts, in a sense, maybe that's not the right word, but law of attraction people often stop with write it down. You write it down, you want to feel it, believe it's already taken place, but people stop short of saying declare it out loud and get others talking about it.
Well, that's right. I mean, if Martin Luther King had written a memorandum or written a note on his desk and sent it around to his office that he had a dream of a racially, equal, and colorblind, nation, it wouldn't have had anywhere near the impact that it had when he obviously made his declaration. And similarly, JFK, when he made the declaration that we were going to go to the moon and back. He said, there was a specific dream. We were going to send a man to the moon and bring him back safely to Earth. And that was not unimportant because there were other countries that would have been happy to send someone to the moon and have them die up there. And so he had a very specific dream, and he said, we're going to do that within a decade. And then he didn't just write a memo in the Oval Office and send it around to his staffers. He got there and he declared it in a way the whole world was talking about it. And of course, then NASA kicked into gear with all the planning, the preparation, because we had no idea how to do it. So that should never be the problem. That should never be the block to achieving your dreams, because then you kick into planning and preparation. And then we actually had the courage to blast off, and of course we did it ahead of schedule.
Woo! You did something similar. I was very impressed by this. While you were with PepsiCo, the Dream Machine.
Well, yeah, having sailed around the world, we unfortunately, I mean, it was amazing. But one of the side effects of that is I've always been a big, lover of the planet. I'm going to sound very green here, but you see all of the trash that's washing out of our waterways and everything like that, and the plastics and you name it, all sorts of trash. And we're in these beautiful remote islands of the South Pacific, and there's all this trash washing up from the U.S. from our shores. So when I came back, in addition to my day job, I proposed to the company that we embark on a much more aggressive consumer-facing recycling program, and the idea was that recycling cans aren't just trash bins. They're the dream of a cleaner planet. They're a dream of with the way that we structured it, you actually achieved multiple dreams through that program. So that's why it was called the Dream Machine.
Fantastic. And you went from 30%, I understand, in the U.S. to 36% in 4 years. Yeah,
and I won't claim full responsibility for that. What happened was exactly what we wanted to happen. Is we were starting to get a lot of positive press around around our recycling program, and our competitors stepped it up as well. Not just because they wanted the PR, but just because it was becoming increasingly visible. And so the whole industry has evolved dramatically, and that can only be a good thing.
Awesome. What does it mean to commit to intentionality?
Intentionality in and of itself is not what you commit to. I think you commit to the dream, and a way to build that commitment is to get increasingly intentional. But again, I think the higher your degree of intentionality. So wherever you are in anything, like you may have a dream that you want a better relationship with your son or your daughter or your wife or your mother or whoever. Okay, so how intentional are you going to get about that dream? And what? So first of all, how can you get as specific as possible? What does that look like for you? how can you get intentional about it? So
So they're asking the right questions.
so you're asking the right questions, and then then you, as I say, you tell people that you want a better relationship with your mother, your son, your daughter, whoever, and this is what success looks like. This is what the dream looks like, and then enroll people to help you get there, and do the planning and the preparation again. It's not just going to happen. Do the planning and the preparation, and then have the courage to go for it.
What is the definition of courage to you?
Ooh, it's such a complicated word. It's a wonderful word, that has there's courage on the battlefield. There's courage. There are all different kinds of courage. I think what I talk about in the book is I peel it apart a little bit, but it doesn't do the word itself justice. But I think you need to have the courage to set sail. So. Not just set sail, and I use obviously a lot of nautical metaphors. You have to have the courage to set sail, the courage to venture out into the unknown, the courage to trust yourself and your team, the courage to accept reality, to listen and to accept reality quickly, the courage to be optimistic, the courage to have fun. Right. I mean, we're going to go around once, right? So we might as well have some fun while we're doing it. So I think there are multiple components to it, but it's really having it's actually summoning you've done all the preparation, you've got all the dreams, but nothing's going to happen if you don't actually, metaphorically untie the boat and head off in whatever direction you want to go.
And that's an analogy I talk about a lot, about how the whole world changes. You get a new perspective when you've cast off the lines and you've set sail and you're away and you're looking back at the whole world you've just left behind.
That's right. And what's an exciting way to think about that is we'd done all the preparation, but at some point we actually needed to head out across the Atlantic. And this is 3,000 miles of open ocean that we're in a little boat. And that night, the first night that we set out, we were terrified. I mean, just because really we'd done it all. We thought we were as prepared as we could be, and yet we still had to go. And so that was we were pretty afraid. But then fast forward about 8 months, and we're setting sail out from the Galapagos to go across the Pacific Ocean, a much longer ocean. And a much more dangerous ocean, and you'd have thought we were going for a day sail around a lake. And of course, the difference is, we had built our courage from the first experience, and we knew we could do it. And so, as you say, you're changed permanently when that happens.
You build that courage muscle.
That's right.
Like your 10-year-old daughter jumping into the water in the middle of the Atlantic to take a swim.
Exactly. Yeah, it was. You got 3 miles of ocean beneath you, and we didn't have any wind, and so she and my younger brother, who was with us on that leg of the trip, decided to go for a swim. So yeah, it was pretty great.
On that note, with strengthening the courage muscles, what was it like swimming with the sharks with your son?
Oh, amazing! Sharks are incredible animals, and we are incredible beasts. And we'd go down there. We didn't dive with like tiger sharks we didn't do any cage diving, but in the Galapagos we were diving with hammerheads, and they're still pretty impressive and pretty huge. And we were swimming along scuba. We were doing scuba diving, and suddenly 12 came right at us, and it was just awe-inspiring. It was. But again, it takes a little bit of courage. A lot of people just say that's stupidity. So, and maybe they're right, but I like to use that as a display of courage.
I like it, and you've been building that courage muscle for a while. If I understand right, you were doing things like you rebuilt a home. Well, you bought a home, you fixed up, you sold it, and then I'm a bit particularly of an old car nut. I've had 3 MGBs myself. It's a disease.
That's right.
You went with the Alpha,
especially with the electronics in that particular car.
Oh, Lucas Electric, the dark side.
That's right. I think it's not about how much can I achieve. And that's really important. This isn't about like who's done the most when they die. The most important thing is like is just clarifying for yourself what is as you look at all of the different components of your life. What are the dreams that are important to you? And I don't care what anyone else thinks. What are the dreams that are important to you? And assuming that they really are important to you, then all I'm trying to do is provide a pretty straightforward framework that, yes, does take some commitment on the part of whoever's doing it, but a pretty straightforward framework to say, well, like, what can we do to dramatically alter the outcome, and instead of having a lot of businesses and people die full of potential, how do we radically alter that outcome? And that's what I'm trying to propose in the book.
What's a key way that we haven't discussed so far to radically change the outcome?
Well, we haven't gone deep into courage, and I obviously peel that apart in a lot more depth. But I think understanding what it is that really makes you tick, and we don't spend enough time doing that. We're in a very we're always running, and we're always being bombarded with bad news from the from the media, because that's what engages people. We've been told that we're super divided, and all of this kind of negative energy just, I think, sucks it from us. So I try and find time both in the morning and the evening just to be thankful, and to I know it is, to have the gratitude journal that says, wow, things are actually pretty great, and yes, I have these challenges, and I've got to deal with that, and I've got to deal with that, but on balance, there's an awful lot of positivity in my life, and I don't think we spend enough time as individuals reflecting upon that.
Where did that come from, and do you do any meditation or any time in the silence?
Well, I do. I'm not a good meditator, but I do try and like keep quiet for a little bit of time in the morning. Oftentimes in the shower, it's like I take a little bit of a longer shower just to kind of disengage. But another one of my ways for getting away from all the noise is obviously to get on my boat and just be one with the wind and the water, and that for me is amazingly rejuvenating.
When you talk about and the connection to nature is just dumbfoundingly huge, which brings us, we'll take apart courage just a little bit here, and a few of the things, and one of them that you get out there on the ocean, if you're smart, you get it in moment number one, is the importance of being humble.
Yeah. I think humility is the conduit to learning, and arrogance is the block to learning. So when you're humble, you open yourself up, I think, to learning and really understanding new ways of thinking or acting or doing or being. When you are arrogant, then you have the answers to everything, and so I think I don't know whether this is like actually physically true, but I think like the neuron pathways in your brain to learning are actually blocked. I really do, so I'm a big fan of humility. Take
the cup, empty it out, say I'm willing, I'm open.
You got it. Yeah. What can I learn? What can I learn from you? We were in the San Blas Islands, and meeting with the Kuna Indians, and one of them, a fisherman came. His name was Leon. Came up to us and to see if we'd buy some fish from him, and he asked us how long we were going to stay, and I just said as long as it takes for us to learn your culture, and so that just opened the door to us having a completely transformational experience with that group of individuals, rather than just, we're here for a couple of days and then we're off.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not that you can sum it up. There's no way. But what are a few things you learned?
Well, we met his family. We were invited to. They have nothing, and they invited us to dinner. And the next day we went. We were invited to go to their most sacred place, which is the graveyard. The cemetery, which is up in the foothills on the coast of Panama. We hiked up there, and then they explained their cultures and traditions as it relates to death, which are completely different from us in the West. Like they dig a much bigger hole, hole, and then they sling a hammock in it. They lay the hammock in the grave, and then they put boards over it and they cover it so that the departed are free to relax in a hammock for all eternity, overlooking the islands. And it's like, wow. And we put people in a box. So I mean, that kind of stuff. I mean, you really just learn a whole bunch of kind of life-changing stuff.
Out by Panama, you also learned the meaning of asking for help, I believe.
That's where we ran aground, yes. And And as kids, the vast majority of our learning is through asking for help. And yet somehow as adults, we tend to lose that. And so, yeah, we ran aground, and my kids went into the anchorage and asked some folks who were happily at anchor and already, sipping on their cocktails to come and help us. And they ended up working with us for 3 or 4 hours before we were able to get the boat off the bottom. So, yeah. And so we had the courage to ask for help. And then I think we also, as individuals, have a responsibility to have the courage to give help whenever it's asked of us and not put that off. So if someone's asking for help, that's an important request, and it's not, oh, that's not my job, or I'll get back to it later kind of thing. It needs to be prioritized.
Awesome. I almost hate to ask about this one, but it's a great analogy. What do you do when your holding tanks get stuck?
Well, again, this is a difficult one for anybody to. But the holding tank is where your raw sewage is a tank that's held on the boat where your raw sewage goes, and when you're way out in the ocean, you bypass that tank because it just goes straight out into the ocean. But when you're close to shore, you have to hold everything in that tank, and it's hopelessly designed to block up. And the only way that you unblock it is to take the lid off and roll up your sleeve and put your finger down through it all and wiggle your finger to unblock the little hose. And there's a great analogy to that. Think about that holding tank as your life. It's filling up with crap. And what can you do? Only you have to summon the courage to roll up your sleeves. You can't delegate that. You have to have the courage to roll up your sleeves and reach down in and unclog it. And then the benefit is, you have a little bit of discomfort for a very short period of time, but then it's miraculous. The tank drains, everybody's happy.
Smooth sailing.
And it smells sweet again. So, so my point there is that I talk about in the book is really just that it's, there are some things you can't delegate. And there are sometimes, think of that as, you think about it as a relationship with your son or daughter or wife or husband, whatever. And that it's filling up with crap. And, that's not something you can delegate. You've got to roll up your sleeve. You've got to reach down in there and clear it out. And then it's amazing, how instantaneous the result is.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
If you look back at your trip, what sticks out in your mind the most?
Well, it was, the whole thing, really. I mean, the relationship of our family, we just had an amazing adventure and voyage together that has shaped each and every one of us in slightly different ways, but that will carry with us forever. And I'm not going to be sitting on my deathbed saying, you know what, I had this dream of sailing around the world with my kids, and I never achieved it.
Awesome.
And I think our kids got that lesson early. And I think I'm hoping that's a really valuable thing for them to have learned. It's like, hey, if it's an important dream for you, go for it.
So let's talk about kids real briefly, then we'll begin to wrap things up. What words of wisdom would you give parents for their kids today?
Wow, that's a really big topic. No, I mean, I have found that this book really resonates with kids. Like if you read that Katie Couric is a pretty big fan of the book, and she's given it to her kids so that as they launch from high school to college, or from college to start their careers, it's just a really good grounding to say, to do that with probably a much higher degree of intentionality than they probably were thinking about. I mean, I was kind of like stumbling along when I was kind of going from not in a bad way, but I think there are far fewer kids that have very clear direction for and aspirations of what they want than not. And I find that the reaction that I've got to the book is that it's very useful for kids to think about being intentional about, okay, so I want to go to college. Yeah, but why do you want to go to college? Where? To study what? Or I want to go to trade school. Why? And what are you trying to achieve? And that's to what end? It just opens the conversation to talk about dreams in a way that we just don't do.
Love it. And for parents who are listening to this and wondering how you pulled this off with the kids out of school for a while, how'd you do that?
Yeah, we just, honestly, there's a program called Calvert, and a company called Calvert, and you could basically buy any grade in a box. And so we bought 5th and 7th grade in a box, and we used those materials. And then whenever we'd get to shore, the kids would take tests, and they had a teacher assigned to them from Calvert, and obviously we were doing the homeschooling, but they got full academic accreditation for the year. So again, you can, if you're intentional about it, you can figure out solutions to those kind of challenges.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Where can people go to find out more and to find your beautiful book?
Well, they can find it in the usual suspects, so Amazon.com. They can go to BarnesandNoble.com, and it's actually available in many retailers now across the country. And then if they want to find out more about the Cage Group, they can go to thecagegroup.org, and there's also a link, to get the book from the site.
Beautiful. What's another dream that you guys have coming up?
The book was one, and now that one's come to life. And now my wife and I are helping rebuild the Episcopal Church of Cuba. So we're spending a lot of time trying to. We put together worked with the bishop there to put together a 7-year strategic plan for rebuilding the Episcopal Church of Cuba, and we're highly involved in making that happen now.
Woo-hoo!
So that's another dream.
So what personally brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
Obviously, beside family and this, that, and the other. Actually, no, the big woohoo is watching my kids and my wife and us as a family thrive. But getting out there on the ocean and just being one on my sailboat, that's my biggest wahoo.
Beautiful. So, and the Hakuna Matata, where is she now?
Well, we sold Hakuna, and now we have a smaller monohull that my wife and I sail that's called Taravana.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Any last words of wisdom you want to share with people today?
Parting thought would be, never forget the awesome power of your dreams.
Amen. Well, thank you so much, Jeremy. This has been a lot of fun, and I hope it gets people not just dreaming their dreams, but dreaming with intentionality, digging deep, telling others about it, getting others involved, and launching their own dreams.
You got it. Well, thanks very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. For everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get all dreams on deck, and chart the course of your life, and shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you, Jeremy.
You're welcome. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much, and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!